What is up, Internet? AJ here, and welcome back to the channel. Now, when I was planning out this week's episode, the topic that I picked, I had no idea was going to lead me down into a rabbit hole of, well, the sort of arguing that you tend to find on topics like this on the internet. And that is alignment. There are a ton of people out there, specifically a few bigger name D&D YouTubers, indicating that they very strongly believe that alignment is dead, that it should just be taken out of the game itself. And I looked into it a little bit further, and as much as I respect some of these D&D YouTubers, there are a lot of things that I disagree with, and that is what we're going to cover today: alignment, and why it still matters. Now, before we get started here, folks, if you like what we're doing, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more videos, and go ahead and share it with your friends if you think it'll help them out. Also, don't forget to hit that bell icon for notifications of when we post new videos. We'll be doing that a couple times a week here. Mondays with the short form videos, and Wednesdays with the playback of Halcyon Tales, which you can find over at our Twitch channel, www.twitch.tv/AJRPG. So go check us out there. We play Halcyon Tales every Wednesday night, starting at 6:30 Central Standard Time. Now let's get into this and try not to upset too many people out there. What I want to do today here is kind of focus on a couple of the arguments as far as why alignment would be considered a bad thing and kind of shoot those down. Maybe not the best way to look at it necessarily, but there are some fundamental errors in the way that some of these video creators are looking at the topic, and a lot of them are using arguments that actually strengthen the use of alignment versus shutting it down. I've even seen one video creator talk about how he lets his players pick an alignment but then ignores it, but then goes on to tell them that they can't do the actions of a specific alignment, which I'm pretty sure is actually using alignment to indicate something in the game. I could be wrong, just throwing that out there. The thing is, I'm seeing a lot of this kind of stuff online in videos about the topic. And so I think the best way to kind of look at the situation is take some of these arguments and break them down a little bit, see what the fundamental argument is, and see what the counterpoint might be. Play devil's advocate a bit, if you will. Alignment is basically this. It's a simple guide to help decide what sort of disposition towards life your character would have. And I've seen people argue that it's how the outside world sees your character. You can look at it either way. There is more flexibility here than people want to realize, but it's all on how you want to interpret it. The thing is, characters are complex. They change as they grow, as they experience new things. And yeah, you can use the alignment to fit them into a nice little box, but even the rule set, even the player's handbook indicates that things are going to happen that aren't necessarily going to fit into that. And characters are going to expand beyond what their little boxes are. People do the same thing. So to not expect your character to do that just doesn't make any sense. At least I don't think so. But the thing is, even as they change and evolve, that doesn't mean that their alignment can't change. And I know people are going to get upset saying, oh, well, you know, there used to be a penalty about changing an alignment and stuff like that. Yeah, there used to be. That hasn't existed since AD&D 2nd edition. Go ahead, look, 3rd edition, beyond. If you find it, let me know. But ultimately, in 3rd edition, they took that out. I've seen people argue with the idea that alignment is just your morality and say that it affects your personality, or that your alignment will control who your character is, and it doesn't need to. I've also seen people argue with the idea that more than just your morality is affected when you implement the concept of law and chaos. Are you sure though? Okay, let's break it down for a second here. What is morality? I literally looked up the definition for it, and you know what I found? You know, they normally got a couple different definitions. The primary definition I came across was principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong, or good and bad behavior. Okay, so yeah, it does mention good and bad in there, but right and wrong. Principles concerning distinction between right and wrong. You know what that sounds to me? That sounds like maybe, I don't know, a personal code of sorts. But wait, there's more. A particular system of values and principles of conduct, especially when held by a specified person or society, like laws. So, by definition, it literally means that morality affects laws and chaos, but also good and evil. So it's doing exactly what it says it does. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Moving on. The next biggest argument that I've seen is that it has no effect on mechanics, or it doesn't affect them the way that it used to, or that it's just not important. And to that, I say, kinda. So it doesn't necessarily affect class stuff as much anymore. That's not to say that it can't, Your DM may have ideas around that or things you can work with. These are things you should be talking about with your DM anyways. But it does still affect some mechanics, so to speak. I'm looking specifically at things like protection from good and evil, or detect good and evil. Now, while it doesn't necessarily detect those alignments anymore, what it does do is detect or protect against celestials, fiends, things of that nature. Now, why I bring this up is because when you look in the book and it's talking about alignment, one of the main things that it indicates is the way that alignment affects things in the multiverse. And while some of that, I don't necessarily agree with, specifically predispositions to certain alignments based on race, certain races, it is very predominantly indicating are defined by their alignment, which takes things to a little bit different level here. Now, if that is the case, that means creatures like celestials, which are on the good spectrum, or devils, which are on the evil spectrum, would be detected by the spell, which means it is doing exactly what it did, albeit on a smaller scale. One other thing to kind of keep in mind there, it does also mention that if these specific kinds of creatures no longer possess that alignment, they cease to be those alignments. I believe fiends are used directly as a reference. The thing I find interesting there is it doesn't specify what they become or if they cease to exist, which means DMs out there, that could be something fun to run with. Just keep that in mind. Now, one of the other arguments I saw, while being a little bit weaker one, is still one that I want to touch on here, and it's that alignments are subjective and shouldn't be able to shift, and that's why they don't work. And this one bothers me probably more than it should, because as we mentioned earlier, characters, as they grow, they develop, they change, and this is something that's true in game and in real life. Now, the thing is, the mechanics of the game have always allowed for the shifting or changing of alignment. Now, while the system earlier on wasn't exactly ideal with the penalties and whatnot, there was always the option for things to change your alignment as your character developed, which means it was always the intention. And I think that's what one of my biggest arguments here comes down to, is alignment is functioning the way it was always intended to, the way it always has. People nowadays are trying to make it out to be something that it's not, or trying to find bad in past incarnations of it as to reasons why it shouldn't work now. And the reality is, those were bad things in the past that were taken out, specifically penalties. But the system itself was always intended to be fluid. And nowadays you have more freedom to run with it than you ever did before. What it comes down to, though, is talking with your DM. If you have a question about whether or not something is good or something is bad and the subjectivity of it, talk to your DM. This is plain as that. You should be doing that anyways. Communication in the game is one of the most important aspects, and if you're not doing that, well, you're going to have a whole lot bigger problems. This may just add on to that. Now, the last thing I want to cover today is the idea that alignment doesn't add to the game in any way. And that's just not true. Like I said, alignment functions the way it was always intended to, and that is as a guideline to help you pick a moral direction for your character. It was never intended to put them into a straitjacket and tie them into a certain course of action. It was intended to help set them along a path and maybe help guide them along that path, but never to force them along that path. That's the reason they gave it the fluidity that they did. Here's the thing. We live in a very different time for D&D. Years back, while storytelling and character development were still a thing, there was also a lot of focus put on dungeon crawling, dungeon delving, the adventure itself. But as time goes on, and I mention this looking specifically at newer players who are finding their inspiration in live streams that they've seen, whether it's Critical Role or something of the same kind, where their inspiration in getting into the game is a campaign that is based on character development and story-driven campaigns. The emphasis on that is even more important than it ever was, and I even have seen some YouTubers arguing that this is a reason that alignment doesn't work. But the fact of the matter is, using it as a tool to help guide your character and help the creation process to help you learn your character better makes it even more important than maybe it ever was, given the playstyle that new players coming into the game are adopting. The idea of using alignment to help indicate what a character would think is right and wrong, or help guide them in the sort of directions that they might make, is only going to help them learn more about their character as they play them. It's a jumping off point, but it was never intended to force somebody along a very narrow path. And that's why I think it still works the way it was always intended to. But from there, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. What do you think? Am I way off the mark, or am I right? Are the rest of these YouTubers just trying to find a controversial topic to incite a conversation, or are they onto something? Everybody's going to have a different take on the situation, and that's what the comment section is for. So let me know what you guys think. Leave something down below there. Let me know where you stand. If you guys like what we did here on the video, or what we do in general, go ahead and hit that like button and even subscribe. Let us know you want to see some more content along the same vein. And also hit that bell icon for notifications of when we post new videos. Like I said, guys, we're posting 2 times a week here, both short form videos on Mondays, as well as the playbacks with Halcyon Tales on Wednesdays, which you can catch over on our Twitch channel, www.twitch.tv/ajrpg, every Wednesday, 6:30 Central Standard Time. So go check us out there. In the meantime, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I'll catch you in the next video. Happy gaming!